Allison, thank you so much for being here today. For folks who don't know who you are, could you just give us like a quick background on yourself?
Yeah, I can go by Allison or Allie,
Okay.
and it does not matter either way. Allie's been a nickname for a long time, but then I really like Allison too. So anyway, that's a fun fact because people always ask. So I'm Allie Tetrick. I live in Petaluma, California, so a little north of San Francisco in Sonoma County. I think it's some of the best bike riding in the world. I grew up on a cattle ranch in California. I played tennis in college. I'm a biochemist by trade. And I started racing bikes professionally in 2009. I raced in the Women's World Tour until 2017. I did my first gravel race in 2017, happened to be Unbound, and I won it. So I have raced all the things in gravel since then. And I love being home and traveling the world as well. So cycling has taught me a whole bunch, a lot of ups and downs. You lose a lot of more races than you win.
Mm.
Also almost killed me. I survived a traumatic brain injury and coming back. So mental health is really important to me. But cycling is just so much more to me than riding or racing or podiums. I just think it takes so much courage for us to get to start lines, to train, to try to get better at something. And then also the most important part is the people you meet along the way, including the person inside of yourself while you're out there for many
Mm.
miles.
I love that. As far as people that you've met, who are like do you have any role models within the bike industry and the bike world, or like what are some of your favorite people you've gotten to meet?
Oh my goodness, I love everybody. That's a hard question. I think at one point, I have so many role models, and it depends on what space that is. When I was working in chemistry research and drug discovery, and then into exercise physiology, I had a really quick trajectory into racing professional road, and I did a couple races. My grandfather got me into the sport, actually, so that's my first role model. Um, he was racing his bikes well into his 80s,
Mm.
and he just always told me I could ride and I should race and I could go to the Olympics and be the best in the world at this sport. And I thought it was so dorky because I was a tennis player, I was a scientist, and the neon colors, the tight clothes, it was very confusing. But he taught me how much that cycling is for life and like sports are for life. And like I was saying earlier, just about being better at something, like and how much cycling can teach you humility because there's always somebody better than you. You're always learning more about yourself. But then to kind of relax and take yourself a little less seriously because it's just bikes. But how fun is it to challenge yourself? And then speaking of that, I always bring her up, but Connie Carpenter Finney,
Mm-hmm.
she won gold in the 1984 Olympics in the road race. And that was the first time the women's marathon and women's cycling was in the Olympics in LA. So we're coming a full circle. And I called her before do I move to Europe and race for Team USA? Do I sign this professional contract? Do I make this leap of faith to pursue professional sports? And I'm so happy she took my call. And I'm scared.
Mm.
I'm young. I'm 24, 25, and I'm nervous, I'm scared. And she said, what's the worst that's gonna happen? Minus my life flight out later, but and she's like, what's the worst that can happen? What does failure look like? You have this opportunity to get better at something and you can't fail at that. And what a gift that is. And so I always think about that as just what a gift it is to be able to pursue your dream
Mm.
and to meet people along the way. And then entering gravel, um, Rebecca Rush was just she is a good friend and she was doing Unbound far before I was. And she told me how cool it was. And I had this like FOMO feeling because being racing world tour is so stringent and strict and ruled, and you're on this kind of on this pedestal and traveling around and doing these iconic, beautiful races. But she just made cycling, she brought like cycling as an adventure to me. And I really craved that. So she was there at the finish line when I won and spraying the champagne. And I don't think I would have been there without her.
Mm.
And then my last one, Christy Moan.
Mm.
And Christy is like the queen of all things Unbound. And she actually was our officiant in our wedding when I got married. So um, I love her that much, but just always giving me space to be who I was, getting more women to start line, just showing to be accepting, loving, and not that it's not this very intimidating thing to do. Like to see more people like you lining up to events all over the world. I think she's just an incredible role model to just her acceptance, grace, and love.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on right now, right? To get more women doing Unbound this year.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that and why that's important to you too?
It's so important to me because I think if we don't see more women at these start lines, we don't see more women at the events, then you get scared. You want to bring a friend, or maybe she's busy. And so I think that the more we get more women to the start line, it's going to change the way our entire sport looks, and it is, and it's changing the culture of our sport. And it's so important to me to see that change and to be one of the drivers to make that space. Um, so I'm going to be doing the 100 miles at Unbound this year, and doing the more women on miles and getting women to ride with me. And we're going to complete this day together. And it's not like, yeah, you got to be out there on your own and suffer. It's just, it's changing the landscape of our sport the way it should be. And I think it's just people like you, people that listen to this podcast that make that possible. So it's incredibly important to me because it's the way it should be, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like, why not now? So.
For anybody who's listening who's never done a big event like Unbound or any other kind of big gravel race, what advice would you have for those ladies?
Con- Control your controllables. um, I think we get so stuck in the weeds, and the logistics on the training, your nutrition plan, maybe, you're worried about your power, how to change a flat tire. A lot of things can be really intimidating, but you can control your process, how well you prepare. But then I think the other advice is getting to that start line. We talk about finishes all the time and who won, or PRs and podiums, but I think the most courageous people are the people that just start, like just starting something. So I think that's like my biggest advice is start, get to that start line and know how brave you are to be there
Mhm.
and be proud of yourself for that. And if it's a buddy system and you want to bring a friend, that might help, but control what you can, but ultimately accept that challenge and get to the start line is the most important thing to me.
What is it that you like about gravel?
Hmm. Gravel to me is just so Unbound being my first gravel race. I'd never ridden over 120 miles, and 206 miles later I was hallucinating. But I think it is the adventure, and I think that word is very overused. Put that in the bucket with epic. But gravel is adventure. It's freedom. I think you're getting off the beaten path. It's like-minded people there. It's just there's a place for everybody in that sport, and there's more inclusivity and opportunity. And so when I
Hmm.
get to go off road, you're going to a ghost town in Nevada, you're going, up a mountain in Idaho that you wouldn't take your normal road bike on, or a lot of people haven't been there before. So I think it just opens up a whole new world. And then, also if you're worried about safety, there's a lot less cars
Right. That is
and it's
true.
quieter.
Yeah. In terms of racing, I mean, racing on the road and racing gravel are quite different sports. Racing on the road is a team sport and gravel's an individual sport. Um, how different do those feel to you? And is there like one vibe that you prefer over the other, I guess?
I loved being on a world tour team. I loved my teammates, and it's talking about not being able to fail. Like you can fail, but there's everyone on the team has a role. So I was more of a time trialist and all arounder. So I mean, I can sit on the front all day, and ultimately I don't have to win up the big mountain at the end, but I felt like I contributed. And then you have people in the bus afterwards that understand you, um, and you're doing this all together. But I love gravel because it's kind of about you. And it's just like your challenge, and you get to choose what you want to do that day and what that looks like for you without letting other people down. Perhaps you're worried about sponsors or something like that, if you're are sponsored, but I think it's just more about it's your own adventure. It's like kind of choose your own adventure. I'm
Hmm.
using the word adventure again, but it totally is. You're just like, you're in Candyland and you can decide where you want to go and how. And I get to choose my own schedule too. So I'm going to Scotland this year, and my husband and I are going to go do a UCI gravel race in Scotland, and I've never been to Scotland. that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Versus doing the same schedule that I did for 10, 12 years. It's just new places, new scenery, and it's up to you. So yeah, it's total like little magic eight ball, choose your own adventure, though. You can say yes or no.
What are some of your favorite events you've done?
Of course, Unbound.
Hmm.
That was just my first gravel race, and waking up that next morning with like the biggest bike hangover. Like never ever ridden my bike that long, never been in the saddle for that duration of time, and um, I just that one's awesome. I love gravel worlds in Lincoln, Nebraska. I think the gravel is just really pristine. It's like you can like walk barefoot on it. It's like
Mm.
these little pea gravel. It's fast. It's kind of more roady. So I love that and just the people. Sophia and Jason there, I just became my family over the years. So it's really fun to go back to these events around the country where you know people. They come to your wedding afterward. Like, you realize like all these connections you're making. I loved going to the Rift, racing in Iceland up a
Mm,
volcano.
yeah.
Like that was a blast. Oregon Trail Gravel Grinder, 5 days, like adult summer camp. Super cool up in Oregon. I don't know. My list could go on and on, but I think those are the ones that stand out the most to me.
What is it about the longer events that you like so much?
I mean, as a professional, they suit me better. I think longer, a little more arduous. So it's spicy, but it's like a little less spicy than like an hour race. You have more
Hmm.
time to like get in a rhythm, more time for anything can happen. I really like riding my bike all day.
Yeah.
Like, I think, I just think like the longer the better. And I don't do it every day, like for training or anything. So it's just the opportunity to be out there all day, you against the elements, and you get to decide. Yeah, I think that's why I like it. Just longer, harder, but more time to think. And then if you're racing it, there's more time for like to react and plan and calculate what your day is going to look like, or at least what you hope it will. But
Hmm.
ultimately, you just get to pedal in super cool places all day, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I relate. I feel like with very short distances or shorter distances, it really so much boils down to physical challenge, right? Whereas like on these longer events, it becomes more and more a mental challenge in addition
Hmm.
to the physical component. Um, how do you deal with that mental piece? Like, are there any strategies you use that you could share?
Yeah, I think the mental part is so fascinating to me. I had a master's in clinical psychology. And I did that because after my brain injury, I needed to prove to myself I could still learn. And I got very fascinated with the way the human brain works. So I got really into neuropsychology. But, and I get asked that question a lot, like, what do you think about, how do you prepare for it? And I do think the longer, harder efforts just are naturally suited for my personality, which is weird because I'm extroverted and a little, chaotic and bouncy. But when I get out there and get in this groove, like this, it's not monotonous, but it's this rhythmic groove, and you have highs and lows, and no matter how good you feel, it's not going to last, and no matter how bad you feel, it's not going to last. And I love like learning like who I am that day and talking to myself a lot, in
Yeah.
my head. You can go into the darkness in there, but there's always this light of like, wow, I'm really strong. Look at me go. I can do this, or I have another thing I will use in my head, like if you're not having fun, change it. And
Mm,
maybe that's I do need to like slow down or stop for a snack, or it is like push it further because this is fun. Like let's see how like far we can go today. But I think it's, like we were saying, like just getting to that start line and challenging yourself. So once you start pushing through these limits, like how cool is that? You get to push through these limits where then you're mentally questioning your own sanity, perhaps,
yeah.
or your own abilities. But then you're like, yeah, I'm strong. Like, look at me. Like I'm doing this. Celine Yeager, also another great mentor in my life, taught me this mantra that I use a lot, which is forward progress, take care of yourself. And so I've used that so much in races where it's just forward progress. Are you pedaling your bike? Like, okay, you're frustrated, it's humid, it's hot, there's a headwind, you got dropped from the pack you wanted to be in, you're lonely, you're bored, whatever's going
Hmm.
on. Once again, questioning your life choices. But like, are you pedaling? Are you moving forward? And that could be walking up a hill because you're cramping. It could be changing a flat tire. It could be calling an Uber if that's like the case. But are you making forward progress?
Hmm.
And so I think that gives you a lot of grace to like, I am moving forward. I am like doing something in this day, in this
Hmm.
event, in this ride. And then the next part of that is like taking care of yourself. And I think I have to remind myself that that's eating, drinking, your whole fueling strategy, all of that. And then also just like talking nicely to yourself too. Like, Kristen, you're strong, you're powerful, people like you, like
Yeah, yeah.
anything that's gonna work. And that I think that whole mantra though can go into life, right? Like you're frustrated at
Yes.
work in a relationship and your kids are annoying you. I don't know, I don't have kids, but I assume they will annoy you at one point.
But they do, I can confirm.
But it's like forward progress. Like, am I getting him to school? Am I like getting this
Mhm.
project done? And then are you taking care of yourself? Are
Yeah.
you getting enough sleep? Are you making time for riding your bike or exercise, meditation? And so I really derailed that, but I think it's just fascinating the place your mind goes. And I think not to be scared of it. And then also know how to turn it around when you start spiraling, because we all do. And that's another thing, like I said, like no matter how good you feel, it doesn't last. No matter how bad, it doesn't last. And if you're worried, like if you're being competitive and you're worried, your insecurities are coming in, like, oh, this person passed me. I'm usually stronger than this person, or this guy's annoying me. How do I get rid of him? And oh gosh, you you just have to think like this isn't going to last, and here we go, and just try to stay that positive. But you get to meet this people, and I think that's what's going to go with that. When you're spiraling, I think I'm not special. Like everyone spirals during
Yeah.
that day. So it's not like you sit there and when my insecurity comes in, like, oh, she looks so fast or that group just left me. I think, everyone's going to have doubts today. So like, I'm not special.
Yeah.
And so the quicker you can rally and come back to being positive, and the better you'll be off like overall. So I think that's always important to remember. Like, I like to be like, you're not special, which sounds weird, but it's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Like, be like, you're not unique. Everyone's going to struggle. It's just like, how quickly can you turn around that and start having a better day?
Yeah. Are there any other things that you've learned on the bike that you've been able to apply in life?
Um, Breathing.
Hmm.
When you start panicking, the hill's hard, that spicy hill, somebody's attacking, they're going harder than you want. And so you're like feeling that anxiety, which is also the exertion of the effort. But you start
Right?
hyperventilating, kind of panicking, you feel your throat constrict. And that can happen in nerves with like a job interview. It can happen in a relationship, a hard conversation with a friend,
Hmm.
and just taking those big, like deep yoga belly breaths. And I try to do these biggest yoga belly breaths and kind of become more centered. And when I feel like I do that, my body exits that fight or flight mode. And if I'm calmer, I think I can execute not only pedaling the bike better, but a work project, that hard conversation. Um, and then I think the other thing is like just knowing you can do it. So some things like just look really daunting. And in life, like we have lots of challenges that are
Hmm.
hard and scary and also might just, yeah, be not fun for a little bit.
Hmm.
But knowing you can do that and push through, and how much stronger and better off you're going to be on that other side, and you're going to be a better person overall.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple times your brain injury. Could you talk a little bit
Mhm.
about that?
Yeah, so I was in a professional bike race in 2010. We just came off of racing the Giro. We actually won on the national team, USA. And I was racing and I crashed. I got crashed into at like 45 miles an hour to zero. Shattered my pelvis, broke up lots of things, and my brain. So I got life flighted out, actually, like life flighted out in like one of those like baskets to then get to landing zone. It was a very traumatic time.
Yeah.
And I returned to racing once the pelvis was healed. I was so fixated on this broken bone because I couldn't walk. I went through a divorce at the time, just but this was a little bit before concussions were cool to talk about. This was much this was much like it's a traumatic brain injury because of the unconsciousness and seizures and things like
Yeah.
that. It's like a little difference, but still a head injury. And so we were so fixated on the pelvis, right? Because I can't walk. So I'm like, when can I ride again? And so, 4 or 5 months later, I'm back on the bike and I'm back racing. And honestly, I was probably the fastest I've ever been. Like just power numbers off the charts, like all of that, winning races. And I was so unhappy. But like cycling became then my entire identity. Especially now I'm newly divorced, I'm still young. I'm like just fixated on the bikes, going to the Olympics, going to, you know, everything. And it
Yeah.
became all I was. And then I was at the Pan American Games in 2011, and I had just a fluke kind of endo crash, slow motion. Those sometimes can be the worst. And then I was just out, like it was just darkness.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot of years. I was like, in therapy, they're like, something's positive is going to come out of this. And I just had anger in my heart. I was like, there is nothing. Oh, that makes me want to cry. Like,
Hmm.
like I couldn't, and I can find positive in anything. Like that's my personality. And I was like, I can't find anything for years.
Mm.
Um, and I learned during that time, though, how dark I was and how much help I needed. And that just surrounding my entire identity around the bike was not a healthy approach for anyone,
Right.
especially me. As I'm getting medical help and working with my team doctor, still work with her, a neuropsychologist, I realized I couldn't read. Like
Mm.
there's all these things. I was depressed. My anxiety was way heightened. Like I've probably always been an anxious person, but I was just super depressed, and I wasn't allowed to race for a long time because they finally realized how bad this head injury
Yeah.
was and how much worse, because I got another concussion on top of a TBI within 9 months. Um, and it was really, I got bad. I got real bad. So racing on, finally, it made the cover of Bicycling magazine, but like finally, they're not letting me race. And this is different than broken pelvis because you're like, you can't race. This one, like, I'm physically look fine,
Right.
but I'm so not on the inside okay. So
Hmm.
I'm glad like I learned to ask for help, or I had to. I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have made it. But then I finally start getting them like clear me to race. And that's how they finally did. They're like, why? Why do you want to go back to the bike? Like, you can die. Like, this is so bad. Like, you do not want to like hurt yourself again. Like, why would you want to race? And that's where I said the swear word bike owes me something. I said the effing a bike owes me
Yeah.
something. I'm sure that's how I said it. And but I was so mad at the bike because I was like, I did not sacrifice this entire time in my life for just to be taken away from me. And I wanted to come back, but I wanted to come back on my terms. And I think that was probably one of the healthier decisions I've made. So then I learned that I'm not just a bike rider, and I remembered everything else I was. Like, I'm a scientist, I'm a storyteller, I'm a daughter.
Hmm.
Now I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm, all these things, I'm a good
Yes.
friend. Um, and so then like the bike became and racing became my choice. And I'll tell you, I don't think I was as fast for a while or won as much for a little bit because I was still pretty angry, but then eventually it opened up. And it's still something I struggle with. Coming back to race after, several years of that, and finally like figuring out my mental health side of things and like what I was willing to do, and making it more about my terms. People would be like, you changed, you're different. And
Mm.
it made me really mad. I was like, you have no idea like what is in my head and my heart, and like how hard
Yeah.
it is for me to be here. And I think that's why I realized how important start lines were, is because I was standing on the start line for a big old UCI World Tour race, and people were like, "What's wrong? You're not the same."
Mm.
And in my head, you're like, "F you!" Like you have no idea, like the courage
Yeah.
it took for me to be here.
Hmm.
And so the other thing with it, it's something I just deal with every day. We all do with mental health issues.
Hmm.
And when you're recovering from something like this, I could get in a rear end accident in my car. Thank heavens I've only done that like once, but I mean that could trigger my head injury,
Hmm.
or just, other times. And my husband has to, he's a great confidant in that, and a accountability partner too, because if I get overstimulated at a party with too bright of lights or loud music or a movie, or a motorcycle passes me when you're riding your
Hmm.
bike and it's really loud, things like that, and I'll just get like we call it overstimulated, and that might spiral me into a week of depression, or my anxiety gets like crazy. So be careful of your heads, and then
Yeah.
also just acknowledging the mental health side of things. So that's why I went to go get a PhD in neuropsychology, because I
Hmm.
just thought that was so
Hmm.
fascinating on understanding the brain chemistry and why this happens, and then how you're not going to heal it, but what you can do is to be kind, to just recover and see who you are each day. And I don't think you have to have a brain injury to have that problem, but
Right.
it's fascinating. So just under like not fascinating in a good way, but also I think it makes us healthy to recognize where you are each day and what causes you to spiral.
Right.
But it's been a tough run, but I'm proud of where I am and probably not proud of a lot of moments during that time, but that's life, probably.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
I got through it. I only cried
Yeah.
almost once.
Yeah. I do think though that I mean traumatic brain injuries, especially for cyclists and mountain bikers, are very
Mhm,
common, as are mental health issues.
mhm.
And so many folks struggle with this but don't know where to get help or how to ask for help. Do you have any like suggestions or recommendations for those folks?
There are so many good programs out. Like Love Your Brain is a great one that offers free resources for people suffering from head injuries and concussions. And they have chapters around that you can find, yoga classes, uh, video tutorials. I think it's seeking out help. And I think to do that first, you have to recognize there's a problem.
Mm,
And to me, as athletes, like we're all athletes, and um, we so want to hide these weaknesses because you want to look strong for your kids, the people you're lining up in a race, or the people you're coaching through this podcast and in life, right? You
yeah,
want to be strong. Like they're like, you want people to respect you and come to you. And then sometimes you have to remember you need other people
yeah,
too. So it's lowering your guard a little bit to ask for help, but from the right people. Because I find that when we're injured and vulnerable, it's like blood in the water for sometimes like the wrong kind of help. And um, that's where I think like the neuropsychologist helped me train my brain to read again. It's not like I couldn't read a menu. It was just like I couldn't read like law. Like I still have a hard time. Like audiobooks are much better now. But so working with somebody like that. But I thought it was also great to have an independent accountability partner because going to my husband and he's like, Al, you shouldn't ride today. You're not feeling well. And I'm like, I'm fine. What do you know? Right. Versus if I have, a medical professional telling me,
hmm
and I'm working with somebody like that that's outside of my intimate family, then I will probably be a little less uh, aggressive or paranoid that like something is like off or
yeah,
fight more. Um, and then tracking your progress is important too, because I think sometimes, as you get better, you're like, I'm better now. I'm fine. I don't need to go to therapy. I don't need to address that issue. I've put it away somewhere dark in my heart and I'm fine. And then you're not fine. So tracking
right.
your progress to see where you're at is really helpful. But I think nowadays, like too, there's just so many resources and people that understand and are there to talk about it. So
Mhm.
it takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable that way and say like we have a problem, but then it's also so important, I think, for us to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too that what you mentioned, like as we always try to be so strong, and I think we are so accustomed to pushing through, right? Like it's uncomfortable. I'm just going to keep pushing through. And that's maybe something that actually hurts us at times.
For sure, especially as
Yeah.
women. I mean,
Yeah.
women,
True.
we're like, I deserve this space. I need to get into this space. I worked hard to be here. And now you don't want to be like, oh, this is hard,
Yeah.
because you want to be strong. And yeah. So, I mean, recognizing that sometimes showing weakness is better strength than pushing through. I think it's more impressive than pushing through when you shouldn't.
Yeah. You talked a lot about the mentorship that you've received, and
Mhm.
now you have done a lot to advocate for getting young girls into sports. What have you done in that area, and why is that important to you?
I I think that's just what I loved about gravel so much was meeting like-minded people that were willing to donate their time for me to give me a place to be in. And I was done racing professionally. I never intended to race gravel
Mm,
professionally. I was done racing, but and then I wanted to give back because I looked at all these beautiful, I'm going to say it again, adventures. I had all these
mhm.
beautiful adventures and life experiences and this opportunity to race my bike and people that were supporting me and telling me good job or telling me it's okay, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to give back to my community that had given me so much. And it was actually, so I'd lead rides, I could do mentorship rides and all that. But then it was COVID, and my husband and I, instead of making sourdough bread, we were like, what should we do? And so we designed some bandanas to sell. through our little company to raise money to get more girls and kids on bikes. And so we do scholarships. We mainly partner with NICA, so give a lot of scholarships to the GRIP program, which is Girls Riding Together. And there's a NorCal High School Cycling League up here in Petaluma, which is great. And they go camping here in Petaluma, actually. So I can go camping with the girls, leading clinics, talking about mental health, confidence, the questions that they have. They are probably much better on a mountain bike than I am. So I think I have better advice on school and education and mental health and confidence.
Yep.
So when we go to Unbound, we fund the Coyote Composite team, which is their NICA program. I work with Outride. Little Bellas is
Hmm.
such a fun program we work with. But yeah, but just to get I think cycling is such a hard sport to get into. It's just the cost of entry is insane. So if we can not we can donate our time to mentor, to lead rides, to talk to somebody. Like I try so much on my Instagram or whatever to answer these questions or provide time to give advice, encouragement, direction. And I can do that in person at events, but also just providing the scholarships or showing up to these clinics and camps is really fun. And just making it easier to get in, like working with my sponsors to donate bikes, helmets, clothes, water
Yeah,
bottles, race entries. Um, it's fun to see. It's been a huge growth,
yeah,
in that side. And it's fun to be a part of it. So
it
it's something I'm pretty
is.
passionate about. Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. Super
You're
important.
welcome.
What do you have coming up this year? What's happening in 2025?
Oh goodness, we're gonna have so much fun. Um, let's see. Oh my gosh. In March, I'm headed to Patagonia, Chile.
Oh,
And yeah, I'm going with my teammate Ian Boswell, and we're gonna do this charity ride called Fireflies Patagonia. It is to raise money for children at this cancer hospital in Santiago. And so it's like a 10-day ride across the Andes, gravel bikes. And I've been to Chile, but I've never ridden across the Andes in Chile.
it's gonna be amazing.
I'm so excited about
Hmm.
it. That's going to be great. So that's going to take up half of March. In April, we have Sea Otter. So if you guys haven't been to Sea Otter, we could probably do a little giveaway on your podcast for an entry to Sea Otter. If somebody wants
That
to
would
do
be
an event
amazing.
there, let's do something.
Okay.
The Sea Otter is a great bike party. There's gravel, mountain biking, road, big festival in Monterey, Carmel area here in California. So that'll take up a week in April. We have a local event series here called the Grasshopper Adventure Series, which is great to pop into those. Um, Speaking of mentoring, like I was able to ride one of the gravel races. It was 46 miles, but 6,000 feet of climbing. And I rode with a freshman in high school woman the whole day, just so to do a gravel race, but then to ride with her all day and be there to hand her snacks, remind her to eat, take her jacket.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool. It's a great mentorship
Yeah.
program put on by a friend of mine. And let's see, we're doing Unbound, of course. I'm going to help lead women. So if any women listening are doing the 100 and want to ride with me or tell me your goals or the 200, awesome. I can help guide you there. But I'm going to try to probably do a bandana run for that so we can see who's riding with us and then to give back to get more girls on bikes
Cool.
there. Um, SBT always, you can't miss SBT. That's going to be great. Amy Charity was my teammate when I raced professionally, and it's fun to see what she's doing. But that Scotland race, we're doing this UCI Growlick. The Growlick is called the Growlick, and it's in Scotland, and we're going to stay in a castle, which is
Amazing.
exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm trying this interesting leap of faith with a friend of mine. He owns the Bovine Classic, which is one of my favorite gravel races out here. It's in Paso Robles, Atascaderos, on central coast of California. And it's a really fun race. It's done in those time segments, which I love
Uh-huh.
because you can like go hard and then ride with your friends and then
Yeah.
go hard. Um, Fun story about that one. I did it and I was going for the segments because it's fun, but you don't have to, right? But I was going for them. And the last aid station is still like 20 miles to go. And it's at this Long Branch saloon. And there's fried pickles and everything else a saloon has. But it's the aid station. And so I got distracted and went into the saloon. And then my friend is texting me. He's like, you need to leave the saloon because the podium is happening. But I was having so much fun. So he and I, his name is Brian Yates, and we are doing a gravel retreat cycling camp
Oh, cool.
in May. And so it's like 4 days, limited to 12 people. It's almost sold out, but it's like a zone 2 just endurance gravel retreat, but a lot around creative thinking and
Mm,
like probes where it's kind of like corporate career building type of a vibe. So that the thought process is about how much you can learn, grow, and be inspired on the bike, and less about your PRs,
yeah.
more about your personal growth. So I'm pretty excited about that. A couple of women have signed up for it as well, which is really exciting to see. And then that's where I kind of felt, oh, maybe I'm doing something right. Like,
Yeah.
because a lot of this stuff becomes so dude oriented.
Yes.
So I have to send you the link of that one. I'm
Yes,
pretty
please.
proud of what it's going to be like. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
send me links for all the information about riding with you at Unbound and this
mhm.
event, and we'll include
Yeah.
all of those in the show notes.
Great. Yeah. So it's going to be a busy year, but we love to support, when I say we, it's, I guess like my sponsors, but also my husband and I, I drag him around to all my gravel things, and he's a great rider, but he always usually does my support for these Unbound things like that. So it's been fun when I do the shorter distance or do another distance, and he has the opportunity to ride. So last year he did Unbound for the first time because we did the 100, so we rode it together, which
Very
was
good.
just fun.
Yeah.
It was so fun. Instead of him doing like 45 seconds, here's your UMass, blah, 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 and me
Yeah.
being chaotic, it was nice to travel with him. But we love going to new events or events we haven't been to,
Hmm.
so it's
Yeah,
fun. That's why we're excited about some of these opportunities. So
absolutely. You've got a super
it'll be a
exciting year
big year.
coming up.
Yeah, I'm sure I forgot a million things, but yeah, I'm excited to see it come together, and excited about the new opportunities. So for sure, I'll
Cool.
be working with Nika and their Girls Riding Together camps and all that. But I'm stoked.
I've got three final questions for you, but first, do you have
Mhm.
any sponsors you'd like to give a shout out to? And also, where can people come find you online?
Oh yeah, well, you can find me on Instagram, X, whatever. But my handle's always at Tetrick, AMTETRICK. If you want to look at the bandanas, you can just Google Allison Tetrick bandanas. That's pretty easy. We have our company's called Saga Ventures, and we came up with that name after Iceland because we went on a saga.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. um, and yeah, I actually love working with Specialized. I've been with Specialized since 2018, but technically that relationship started a lot, a couple years before that, well, several years. And we launched the Mimic saddle to address women's issues while riding bikes, which changed the game.
Yeah.
Also was on the cover of Bicycling last year. If it's called the Silent Epidemic. If you Google that too, it's a great article on what we did there to address. Shockingly, women are built differently than men, and we needed a saddle.
Who
So
would have
we
thought?
started with the Mimic. Yeah, it was a great story. We started the Mimic, and then now we're into like also the Mimic and into mirror and 3D printing, but really just addressing like soft tissue and structural support that
Yeah.
women need. And I think it has been 100% a game changer. Bicycling told me it was the um, best thing for women cycling in this
Hmm.
century.
Yeah,
So
probably.
I'm pretty proud of that. But
Yeah, you should
yeah,
be.
and as far as like other partners I've been with since I transitioned from road racing to gravel, I've been with Specialized, I've been with Lezyme my whole career, which is great for light safety on bikes. I've been with SRAM my entire career. I've never ridden anything but SRAM, so I'm just really proud to work with these people that also believe in supporting women,
Yeah.
product development, innovation, and giving back. And yeah, Wahoo, Jambar, it's great. I'm very fortunate. Fluid nutrition. I'm very fortunate to work with partners that I believe in. I try on this. A lot of them are out of California because I'm a California girl,
Hmm.
born and raised here. I like women-owned companies, B Corps if possible. But yeah, just companies that align with our mission of making the world a better place,
Yeah.
especially getting more women on bikes.
First question for you is what bike or bikes do you ride?
Ooh. Um, 90% of the time, I ride my Specialized Roubaix SL8 because I do not have gravel in Northern California. I have the Sonoma Tapestry. So we have really potholy, bumpy roads, but no cars and beautiful, ragged ocean views and up into the redwoods to the beaches and the farmlands. But my Roubaix SL8 is my daily driver. Future Shock is great for me. And I love it. And then when I ride gravel, I have two options depending on the course. I'll either ride the Diverge STR, which is like has a dual future shock, or the Crux. I do own a mountain bike. I have a Specialized Epic Evo. Um, I should ride that more than once a year. Okay, I got on that bike the other day and it didn't have a power meter. And as I got on, I was like, went to go ride with my friend. And I came home and I had a princess attack with my husband. I said, there's no power meter on this bike. And he was like, well, if you rode it, you would know. And I was like, oh. The next day, don't worry, I woke up and had a power meter on it. So all was right in the world. And then I rode it again to prove it to him that I would ride it. We're going to ride them this weekend up at my parents' ranch. So,
Very good. Second question is
oh,
where, oh, go ahead.
oh man, I had one more. We have a Globe, one of those cargo bikes.
Oh, yeah.
And and we made it where it's an XL, and I sit on the back, and Blaze drives it, and we go to the tennis courts and the grocery store and to parties, and it just makes me laugh so much to be sitting on this back with like I have a whole seat, like a whole seat I can
Uh-huh.
sit on, and we drive around town.
You have
Anyway,
some
and we
good,
put
good,
on the pan. Yeah, go
good
ahead.
videos on your Instagram of you doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen that.
we put the tennis balls in the panniers. It's so fun. I just laughed so hard. Sorry, I forgot about that one. It brings me great, great joy.
That's pretty good. Second question is where is your favorite place you've ever ridden your bike?
Where I live, Petaluma, California is number one, has my heart. Number two, that is not my hometown, is Gore, Spain. So it's in
Mm.
Catalonia, Spain. I was based out of there 2 years, my last 2 years racing world tour. And it's along the Mediterranean and Costa Brava. And it's just stunning. The food is great. The terrain is actually very similar to here. But I just love the people. So we just went there for our honeymoon a couple of years after getting married. But yeah, look it up, Bagor, Spain, but it's in Catalonia. It's on Costa Brava, and I think it's the second slash first best riding in the world.
Final question is what do you love most about riding your bike?
Freedom. I just think it's freedom. It's freedom to express myself and whatever version of me there is that day. So what I get to see, smell, feel. Um, and I grew up riding horses, and the bike does something very similar. It's like wind in your hair. You just experience the world in a different place. And I think you experience yourself in all new places every time you ride.